According to testimonies, the younger sibling Destiny was not safe from all of the abuse, but saw her older brother Devontae get hurt the most. He would be locked in the bathroom, tied up, beat up, starved, and mistreated.
Hello, hello, what's going on, everybody? We are back with another special reaction. And this time, it's to a channel that is quite sinister. It's called Death Row Executions. And we've just discovered it, and we had to start binge watching your stuff because it's right up our alley. It's so good. It's so good. They've literally earned all those subscribers, and I'm just glad to be able to have permission to now react to their videos. So this is going to be the first one, and I'm really excited. What do you think, Jen?
Yeah, I'm excited too. So, with that being said, I hope you guys are excited for this too. So today we'll be doing Death Row Executions, episode 48, the story of Lisa Coleman.
And I have no idea who that is. Usually I don't know the names on here, and I think that's sort of the exciting thing is there's so many people out there that you have no idea about. You don't know the story, and then you find out about it and you go, oh my gosh. Ooh. These are some scary stories, guys, and it's amazing. It's amazing to actually have the opportunity to have somebody document all this for us. You know what I mean? Sure. So without further ado, guys, let's get this bad boy started. 3, 2, 1.
Hello, this is Air, and welcome to the 48th episode of Death Row Executions. Today's story is on Lisa Ann Coleman, who was sentenced to death by method of lethal injection in the state of Texas. Lisa Ann Coleman was born on October 6, 1975, in the state of Texas. She was born into unfortunate circumstances because her mother, Patricia Coleman, gave birth to Lisa at the age of 13. Patricia had been raped and molested by her stepfather, James Bunch, and nothing was ever done about it. Being so young and psychologically damaged, Patricia was not capable of caring for Lisa and never developed that unconditional love or bond. It wasn't long before Lisa was also sexually taken advantage of by multiple family members. The physical abuse was documented to have started when Lisa was only 4 months old, and at that age, she was hit for crying like any newborn would do.
Jeez.
4 months old. You people heard that. Yeah. Let's go back to this in 3, 2, 1.
In her toddler years, she was hit with extension cords and for a minimum of 3 years was sexually abused by one of her uncles by the name of Leotis. Child Protective Services intervened early on, and Lisa was placed in foster care for the first time when she was just 3 years old. Throughout her young life, she was in and out of the foster care system, but still had a hard time whether or not she was with foster parents or with her biological family. Lisa was also sexually taken advantage of for the first 2 years she was living with her first foster family, and the only reason it stopped was because the foster parents' house burned down and she was placed with a new family. This meant that for the first 5 years of Lisa's life, she was sexually abused. Eventually, Patricia was awarded supervised visits, but Lisa began to feel alone when her mother would miss majority of these visits and not communicate with her. The times in which Patricia did come to visit, she would call Lisa offensive names, with one nickname sticking with her into her adulthood. The nickname was Pig, and not only did she experience bullying at home, but as a preteen, when she was able to live with her family, they too made fun of her appearance and called her Pig. When Lisa was just 11 years old, she and a cousin got into an argument because the cousin made her aware of the fact that she was a product of rape. The argument turned for the worse when Lisa was assaulted and stabbed in the back by this cousin. Within the next couple of...
See, people, a lot of times it's the adults who create a lot of these monsters.
Absolutely.
They create it out of the children. It's disgusting.
It is.
Let's get back to this in 3, 2, 1.
Years, she had been introduced to drugs by a family member and also began drinking. By age 16, she gave birth to her first child that she did not end up taking care of, and also dropped out of high school in the 10th grade. Some of her family members later testified that she was nice and very good with children, but during this time she was diagnosed with having bipolar disorder and was not taking any medication for it, and was also briefly in a gang. It was during this time, in her late teens, early 20s, that she was sent to prison a couple of times for burglary and for being in possession of a controlled substance. Shortly after her prison stints, Lisa moved in with single mother Marcella Williams and her children in Arlington, Texas. According to testimonies, the younger sibling Destiny was not safe from all of the abuse, but saw her older brother Devontae get hurt the most. He would be locked in the bathroom, tied up, beat up, starved, and mistreated. Starting in the year of 1999, Child Protective Services intervened because of the physical abuse, and he was placed into a foster care program. Marcella took the necessary steps to win her son back, but part of the terms and conditions was that she had to stay away from her lover Lisa Coleman, who also happened to be a felon. Lisa had admitted to a CPS investigator by the name of Edna Campbell that Devontae's busted lip came from her when she got angry and pushed him, which made him collide with a bar stool. CPS felt that Lisa was not a good influence, so Marcella agreed to stay away, and after a year, 5-year-old Devontae returned to live with his mother. Not following the rules set in place, Lisa continued to live with Marcella and her children, and also participated in the abuse. Devontae would get beat with hangers, extension cords, belts, and would be tied up and hid in pantries or other locations within the apartment. Marcella's sister by the name of Latravia Williams said that she would often visit the apartment, and whenever she asked where Devontae was, they would tell her that he was with a family member. CPS was also involved for the next couple of years, but any time they made contact with Marcella, she told them that he was living with other family members, or they would just not be home to answer the door. In 2002, Devontae started first grade in fall, but his mother Marcella pulled him out of school in November due to school staff being suspicious of Devontae's home life. His first grade teacher by the name of Jean Ann Stokes testified that she discovered marks on his body and also claimed that he had a difficult time adjusting with school and socializing with his classmates. The kitchen staff claimed that they would often give Devontae extra food because he was always hungry. Jean Stokes eventually went to the school counselor, and they contacted Child Protective Services. Devontae spoke with a CPS representative that same day on the phone, but his teacher was unable to hear the questions being asked on the other end. Jean then recommended Devontae be placed in an alternative school program that would assist with his delays, but nothing ever happened because that is when Devontae was pulled from school. CPS was also not able to follow up because they were unable to locate Devontae's whereabouts. Lisa had later admitted that Devontae had been tied up since the summer leading up to his first day of school, and she claimed that it was not her idea but never objected to anything. A couple of years later, in June of 2004, Devontae, who had just turned 9 years old that month, started to get sick. He was under 35 pounds and malnourished. Lisa expressed that Marcella was afraid to take him to school or the hospital because she thought they would report her to CPS for child abuse again. She had this fear despite CPS being notified about the abuse of Dante 16 times throughout the years and her being able to avoid them. Instead of continuing to starve Devontae, Lisa and Marcella began to try and
Sorry about that, guys. The dog started walking around there. I had to pause it. Okay, let's get back to this in 3, 2, 1.
nurse him back to better health. After a month and now 35 pounds, although he was able to put on a little weight, he would constantly throw up and was unable to eat a lot. Despite his health, Lisa's sister, who lived 8 apartments down from her, claimed that in June and July she saw Devontae happy and playing with other children, and there were no signs of anything abnormal happening. Unfortunately, on July 26, 2004, things took a turn for the worse when Devontae's health began to change. Marcella tried to give him a variety of different medications because she still refused to go to the hospital. In his system was NyQuil, Theraflu, Pediasure, Pedialyte, and he had been given a small amount of chicken noodle soup. With his declining health, he still had fresh wounds on his body, but on that particular day there was cream on his wounds that were wrapped in bandages. Later on in the day, the couple decided that it was time to call the cops because Devontae was now unconscious. When they called 911, they let the operator know that their son was having trouble breathing, but in actuality, he had been dead for a minimum of 3 hours already. When the operator tried instructing Marcella on how to administer CPR, she hung up the phone. When emergency finally arrived on the scene, they noticed that Devontae had already passed and he was lying on the floor in a diaper and bandages. When an autopsy was later conducted, Devontae had over 250 wounds, swollen hands, ligature marks around his ankles and hands, and he also had a disfigured ear. It was concluded that Devontae ultimately died of malnutrition along with pneumonia. In September 2004, Lisa was indicted on charges of murder and kidnapping due to the fact that he was bound and being held against his will. He was not considered free or liberated. The actual trial in Tarrant County, Texas started in 2006. Lisa pled not guilty, while her girlfriend Marcella pled guilty. Defense tried to argue that Devontae died by choking on the chicken noodle soup, and some food went down the wrong pipe into his lungs, causing the pneumonia, but that was negated. They also tried to assert that Devontae was born with developmental delays, and Marcella just had a hard time controlling his behavior. On the prosecution side, a doctor by the name of Dr. Coleman spoke, and in his own words said that malnutrition will depress the immune system and that certain cells in the body that are designed to recognize invaders and deal with them take up a lot of energy. He said that when someone is malnourished, their system is less able to protect themselves. Also in court was Dr. Nancy Kellogg, who was a board-certified pediatrician and specialist in child abuse. Amongst the 250 marks found on Devontae's body, some of those marks were cigarette or cigar burns. She also concluded that the evidence of ligature marks determined that he was starved to death intentionally. It was said in court that Devontae had the body of an anorexic person because they tend to grow hair in places hair does not normally grow, and Devontae had this same issue. On June 19, 2006, 2 years after Devontae's death, Lisa was convicted of capital murder, and days later, on June 21st, the jury sentenced her to death. Her girlfriend Marcella received life and will be eligible for parole in the year 2044 because she pled guilty. Lisa tried to appeal her case on the grounds that there was not enough evidence to support claims of abuse and kidnapping. She admitted during an appeal that she did tie Devontae up against his will, but she used clothing, and clothing was not capable of causing death or serious bodily injury. She also claimed that it wasn't her intention to cause the death of Devontae. There were over 20 points Lisa Coleman tried to appeal, with the last one being that one of the drugs used in the mixture for the lethal injection should be considered cruel and unusual punishment. Ultimately, all of Lisa's claims were overruled and rejected by the Court of Criminal Appeals of Texas, the Supreme Court of the United States, the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas Fort Worth Division, and the Fifth Circuit. September 17, 2014 was Lisa's execution day, and although Texas does not offer last meals, she ate what the rest of her prison unit had that day, which was macaroni and cheese, a fried pork chop, carrots, green beans, bread, navy beans, pineapple orange cake, and she was able to choose between water, tea, or punch to drink. At around 5 p.m., she received her final rejection for a stay of execution from the U.S. Supreme Court, and shortly after was taken to the execution room. In attendance to watch Lisa die were 5 family members and friends. No one was in attendance in support of the victim who lost his life. Lisa looked at her loved ones as she said her final words. She smiled through the window and said, "Thank you, I'm all right. Tell them I finished strong. God is good," and then gave a kiss. She then laughed and nodded her head as the lethal injection drugs were being administered. Before her eyes closed, she was able to say, "Love you all." She was pronounced dead at 6:24 p.m., which was exactly 12 minutes after the drugs were administered. Lisa was 38 years old, and she was buried at the main prison cemetery in Huntsville, Texas. Thank you guys for watching another episode of Death Row Executions, and now for discussion and question time. Lisa's sister testified that a month leading up to Devontae's death, he was playing normally with kids outside. 250 wounds, a 35-pound 9-year-old boy not yet potty trained and not able to eat would be recognizable. I think sometimes family can be in denial. Recently, I have had the family of someone I have featured reach out to me claiming their loved one was innocent or was acting in self-defense despite evidence, other documentaries, words straight out of the criminal's mouth, and testimonies from that criminal's siblings. Why is it you think family holds on to the innocent version of their loved one? What makes them blind to the evil in these people? I think it's possible to still appear to be nice or be nice and still be a killer. I am sure a pedophile has made someone's day before. It's shocking to me how Lisa's sister would testify that and say that Lisa was great with kids. 250 wounds does not appear overnight. 35 pounds is not a normal weight for a 9-year-old boy, and there were clear signs. And I feel that denial is a tricky subject. My next question is directed towards CPS. Now this family was reported over 16 times, and the reason why CPS said they did not investigate was because they could not get in contact with the family and did not know where Devontae was. My thing is, if a family has been reported that many times, why would you believe Marcella Williams, for example, when she said that Devontae was now living with a family member? I think something like that should be grounds to investigate more. Maybe a missing persons report.
I agree.
Oh, yeah.
I truly feel that CPS dropped the ball and they failed Devontae. I think that it should be mandatory to investigate if a family is reported that many times. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below.
Well, you know what, everyone? Make sure that you guys go and check out this channel. That is Death Row Executions. We'll definitely drop the link in the first comment there and pin it for you guys. Okay, I think I'm going to have to go and calm myself down for a little bit now.
Yeah, me too. That was a pretty tough one there.
Just sort of... These are our... I think these should be called our trigger reactions.
Yeah.
Try not to get triggered. There you go. That's not going to happen. Okay. Well, alright guys, until next time. Keep it spooky.